two poles of the English Benedictine life can be juxtaposed, and are indeed in the proximity of two feasts. On the 25th of May we have St. Bede, a quiet, hidden giant of the brain. And then, not long afterwards, on this 5th of June, we have St. Boniface. Both were brought up in the monastic sphere by other good monks from boyhood. Both were bathed in the atmosphere of prayer and contemplation and calm acquisition of knowledge. The one left his knowledge on the page, the other in the air and in the structures which he left behind him. In the air, for he preached well and reached many ears, and converted by the 1,000 people who would give a culture to Northern Europe, Bavaria, Prussia. And they tried also in the Flanders area, but of course there was great opposition in his third missionary journey. He was martyred by virulent pagans. But where was he buried? In the main monastery he had founded, Fulda, still the place where the German bishops meet every year. His real name actually is Winfrith. The beautiful name of a good face, Boniface, probably would be an echo also of his temperament. What is the best evangelizer in the world? The face, the tone, the person, the personality, the temperament. In one word, the goodness of the Lord coming forth. And we can be sure that just as after his death in Fulda, so during his life, the Lord accompanied his powerful word and his beautiful temperament by the power of miracles. We know that in the first wave of evangelization, these do happen. Missionaries know this. The Lord, because there is no other means, provides, and in spectacular ways quite often. The Lord is not short of means, and these of course have an impact and an effect on people. Even in our day, actually, they are not at all absent. By chance, I was talking to somebody who had received this from direct contact. It was somebody quite a few years ago now who was sitting in an aeroplane next to a modern pagan. And he was poking fun at her piety. And just calmly said, as he looked through the porthole of the aeroplane onto the clouds and the sky outside, "Look out there, any trace of any Godhead?" And she did, but she also had a camera with her and put it through and actually just took a picture. What was the surprise? And after it was developed, this appeared. The cloud formation that appeared directly as the sacred face of Jesus. And so it is that to our day, the Lord does actually give signs. We can argue things away, but then we're in bad faith. The person who actually is of good faith is balanced. It does not make a noise. One can immediately detect bad faith by a person's reaction. Imbalanced, illogical, unreasonable, and usually pretty loud. The person who knows a lot says a lot and says it loudly. One learns so much more, like St. Bede, when just with the quiet word of the page that doesn't even have a voice, we give it a voice by reading it. But Boniface did not give up after the first wave of evangelization, for he came back. 2 years had not really borne fruit. Eventually he found his way to the Holy Father. It was then that all the power of the Spirit really took over. Pope Gregory II really encouraged him, and he was made bishop. In fact, he was eventually made archbishop with power to make other bishops over a whole area, which then gave a structure to that whole part of Germany. Bishoprics that still remain to this day. With regard to what we see in these two saints, one thing is in common: the balance. We can be sure that these Benedictine monks, just like the great Augustine, who was sent by Pope Gregory I to England, and his great band of monks, was very much able to operate without losing that stillness of soul which the monastic structure provides. Years ago, I got to know slightly Abbot Basil Hume. He made it possible for me to be received into the church in his abbey under age. And he was very dignified and calm as abbot, and then as bishop and cardinal, head of the church. At one time, he had also another Benedictine with him, Christopher Butler, a course collaborator, suffragan, and this was something which actually linked up with precisely that earlier Benedictine movement. Westminster Abbey was a place of praise and prayer, built by another contemplative who actually was king, Edward the Confessor, who was still there. And there was a movement when the hierarchy was being re-established in England to have the new equivalent thereof, Westminster Cathedral, the Catholic one just being built, to have that manned by Benedictines. That's why monks from downside came to colonize Ealing Abbey, St. Benedict's Abbey, and the plan had been in the mind of the then cardinal to have them live there but commute to the new cathedral and minister there. As it happens, when it was known, when the cat got out of the bag, there was a huge reaction from the secular clergy and it had to stop. And so we have a normal situation. But the intuition was interesting. Something similar happened in Australia. There had been a movement, as Bishop Bullathorne and all these who were involved, to try and have a hugely Benedictine situation in at least a part of Australia. That openness to mission. Again, it didn't go according to plan, but it's interesting that these monks were able to combine. And it is also true that only when there is a combination is there depth of action. And that is perhaps what we see in our time. There is a danger in our day to get into such an efficacious mode of evangelization that we're doing it without God. An atheist cannot evangelize.